Yes, Asuni sir, you can start. Asuni sir,
Yes, sir.
now you can start.
Am I audible? I mean,
Yes,
clearly or
yes.
okay? So, very good morning to all of you, and I'm Ashwini Kumar, and I welcome you on the second day of the session or uh, or the seminar. Today, I first of all I would like to welcome our speaker, Professor Subhas S. He's from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. Our respected sir will be talking on what to do, what do editors and referees expected from the authors, or and hence I welcome all the participants, all and the speaker. So, uh, before that, I would like to call Vikas sir to introduce Professor Subhas sir.
So, okay, sir. Okay, Ashwini, sir. I think we are 2 minutes late. So, I think so. Professor Subhas S. Sir is Professor of Economics in the IIT Madras. So I would like to welcome on the behalf of me and on behalf of the Indian Research Scholars Association to Professor Subhas S. Sir. And as I have shared the CV to the research paper writing group of respected sir, you can read the prestigious work, a renowned work of respected Subhas sir. So, sir, I will not take more time. I want to invite you because we are very enthusiastic to listen you, sir. So you're most welcome, sir. Now you can start, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Vikas and Ashwini. And also, let me just take this opportunity to thank Vikas for having me here. And it's always a talk about my personal experience and then the experience which we have imbibed during our student days as well as the academic life. Probably like it's a this talk is kind of a mixture of my responsibility as an author, as an editor, as well as a referee for many of the journals. So since I'm an economist, probably I believe that this forum is mostly uh, economics or maybe other social sciences as well. So pardon me if there is emphasis too much on the economic side. I mean, that's what I'm familiar with. At any point of time, you feel that you have a question. It's very difficult to see each other. So, but you can just stop me anytime and then raise your queries. So I can already see three hands being raised, Ashwini. Like, should I ask them what is the issue? Like, ask me, Sanjay and Rashi has raised the hands.
No, no, sir. Actually, we will take the question at the end of session. Maybe by mistake they have just
Okay,
clicked
fine,
on the
fine.
hand raise.
Okay. Okay, so my current experience, my current responsibility of editor as an editor is with the Indian Economic Journal, which is published by the Sage, and also I'm also one of the associate editors of the Asian Economic Journal, which is published by Wiley on behalf of the East Asian Economic Association. So let me share my screen. Just Vikas ji or Ashwini, please let me know if the PPT is visible.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yeah, I hope it's visible now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so this is what I'm actually going to talk about. So it's a kind of a mix of my personal experience and give you some tips about how to overcome these challenges and how to
आज तो तुम्हारे में आ रही है आवाज? मेरे में नेटवर्क चला गया लगता है।
handling editors are mostly the associate editors who will, for example, like I mostly get papers related to international trade or industry, or rarely I get some papers on finance as well. So my job is basically to identify the referees, and mostly the referees. I mean, to your surprise, mostly the referees are actually chosen based on I just quickly have a look at the journal, the references which you have cited, and probably look at which is the recent paper which you have cited. So, for example, is there any paper which is published in 2024 or 2023, and probably will try to use that recent reference which you have cited as a potential referee, because I believe that that may be the closest person who is related to this study which you have submitted for consideration of publication. So, and then a request is sent out to the referee. So referee gets to see this request from the journal, asking them to, if they are willing to undertake this refereeing process. And then on their acceptance, the paper gets shared. And then usually most of the journals give a time frame of 30 days to 45 days for the first round. And also there is a possibility that it may not go through the refereeing itself. The associate editor or the chief editor may decide not to send this paper for referees because they believe that there is no point, and it's just a waste of time for the reviewers. So sometimes the papers are desk rejected, and then what happens in many of the really top journals, the desk rejection happens so quickly. I remember we had an editors guild, probably I think 2018, during the Singapore Economic Review conference, where there was a group of editors who were just giving tips like this, what to be done with the papers. And then, one of the editors of which was present there was the Journal of Political Economy editor. So he was actually, I mean, you will be surprised to know that he said that, it just takes him probably 13 seconds or something to desk reject a paper. So this is how the process sets off. So my personal approach is basically whenever I get a request for review, I usually respond to this. I mean, this is my role as a referee. I respond to it immediately. Usually what I do is basically skim through the paper, maybe like a couple of days, because that like many of your own research supervisors, we are also not just doing this process of reviewing or editing. We are also doing many other tasks. So it will take at least, sometimes a week to just to skim through the paper. And then, it might take, 4 to 5 hours typically to read a paper and then write a report, which is probably a page of 2 or less, depending upon the quality of the journal. So I'll tell you later why the page length also sometimes matters. And then the referee reports are usually requested within a month. And the most important thing, I mean, like later on you will see, or you're already into the process of evaluating papers, is you can be critical, but then it shouldn't be like too critical in the sense that it puts off the researchers, especially the people who are at the the beginning of their career. So a polite evaluation is what is usually requested in a paper which is sent out for reviewing. Okay, so the evaluation is accepted, but then not like having a scathing attack on the paper that this is a totally useless paper, that kind of a response. So, so basically, most of the my experience, and then rarely I had bitter experiences with the journals. Usually, most of the journal referees ask for the authors to polish their writing itself, because most of us, including me, I mean, we are not the native speakers of English, so we have this difficulty with writing, and then we seek an outside help or friends or something. So um, that's one way to help the writer sail through the process. uh, so most often what the I mean, this sentence which is given here in a small paragraph, it is basically a review report I got recently. Okay, this paper is basically under review for almost like 2.5 years now. This is in the third year, actually the third round of the revision. And you probably may not believe that the first draft of this paper was actually written way back in 2018. So it's almost 6 years now, and we are still, struggling with this paper, getting, more comments or reviews. So you can clearly see that many referees, they don't make things clear in the beginning itself. So they say in the third round review, I mean, like in this case, in my particular case itself, you will see that the referee is suddenly woken up and then say that, look, I mean, like they are not able to find any contribution or the costly value addedness. See, remember, it's almost like 2 years is spent on this paper, just on the revision and the resubmission part itself. So therefore, it is very, very difficult to navigate this process of resubmission. Some of you might have heard the name for, let's say, heard the name of George Stigler. George Stigler is a Nobel Prize winner in economics, especially in the field of industrial organization. So he had actually written a paper way back, maybe 35 years back or 40 years back, on free labor for costly journals. Right? That's basically the publication processes. We are writing actually, for these extremely costly journals, which is always under the, the firewall of, pay and download. It's like a lot of labor. I mean, especially the research scholars, put in a lot of time and effort to write these papers for extremely, costly journals. And then on top of that is basically navigating this difficult process of refereeing. So this talk is mostly about what the referees do and what is their expectations from the referees as well as the editors. So if you haven't received any letters, or you are not used to these kind of process, some of you may not have undertaken this task. Just to give you what is this referee report is all about. So when you send it for publication, you may get a report back from the editorial office, which contains a detailed report. Sometimes what happens, there will be a summary of 1 to 2 paragraph, which is the referee is just trying to summarize what is this paper, what is the contribution, etc. And then they will also, after the first and second paragraph, basically I tell you, don't read the first and 2 paragraph, because it doesn't mean anything. It's just trying to, he's trying to do his work of just trying to tell that, okay, this paper is good enough, etc., etc. But what matters is probably from the second paragraph or the third paragraph, where you might either get a revision or a resubmission or a rejection. And then if you get a revise and resubmit, they might actually lay down a big roadmap you have to undertake. So this roadmap which the referees lay out, you may or may not like it, or maybe that they might actually try to destroy an original idea we want to do. But then we have no other option but to, mostly undertake all these tasks. So most of the reports will have, two headings. Most of the reports, okay. So they'll have some major comments. So the major comments, usually what the referees will tell you is a list of things, I mean, which you have to do if you want to get this paper published. And then you will also have a set of, minor comments, which is basically asking, some smaller things which you probably will help you to improve upon the paper. So this is basically a typical format of a referee report. I mean, this is just for those who are not very familiar with this process of, a referee report and what is that I am talking about. And then revision and rejection letters, especially I have seen in many of the journals which gives you a rejection or a revision letter, the more possibility of having a paper revised and getting it through, then the referees usually will give you a very detailed set of comments. So in the case of rejection, probably they don't write too much. They'll just say some things and then just maybe one or two paragraphs and then leave it there. So most probably, if you are asked to do a major revision or minor revision, you probably will get a set of or an array of things to do, which might require 6 months or sometimes 1 year. Recently, I refereed a paper in one of the leading journals in economics, and I was so surprised that the editor has given time till December 2025 to do the revision. Right, so you can expect the intensity of the revision which is expected from the authors. Okay, so of course that's an A-star journal. So it actually varies from journals to journal. So now, let me just tell you. I mean, this is basically what is the the foundation I'm trying to lay is like what is that you can do to get your papers published, right? So what you should avoid if you wanted to get a desk rejection or rejection at a later point of time. So in economics, when you are writing any papers in economics, right, what is that you are expected to do? I mean, what is that editor or referees actually look out is basically the novelty of the paper itself. So you have to clearly highlight the why this paper is important. What is it that this paper is adding value to the existing literature, etc. So that's basically what is the if you are an editor of a journal, right? So if I wanted to think about even sending this paper about for a refereeing or not, what I don't have time, right, to read your 30 or 25 pages of the paper. All that I have is left with me is to read the introduction part and then probably look at the conclusion part. So when I read the introduction, I should get the feel that okay, this is worth a paper which can be sent out for refereeing, and then there is a possibility of getting this paper published. So the novelty of the paper is very, very crucial when you're writing papers in economics. I'm sure it is true for any of the other social science or any science streams as well. So the idea of this research is basically to show your knowledge, right? And it's not about writing an editorial for a newspaper, right? Writing some witty, humorous editorial. That is not what is expected when you write papers. So the whole idea of writing is provide new evidence. If you are doing an empirical study, you have to cite appropriate literature and approach whatever you are trying to test or verify using an analytical perspective. And most often what happens is whenever you send a paper for publication, right? I mean, I don't have much experience. I am only 15 years into this profession. So what I have seen is that, I mean, even as a supervisor, many of you also have heard of this coming from your supervisor that your writing is mostly like journalistic writing, right? It is not scientific writing. So when you are writing, you have to sort of adopt a tone which is catering to the scientific crowd. Okay, there has to be some distinction between a journalistic writing and a scientific writing. And mind you, I'll tell you that it takes a lot of time and hard work to to reach a certain level. I would not say that we will completely learn this whole process. Like every day is a learning process, so therefore it takes a while. So it's like a kind of a frustrating in the initial period of your academic life. So often you have to take this whole process and try to learn
मेरे पास
and
है क्या?
adopt a tone which doesn't resemble a
हमें
journalistic
काम तो
writing
देंगे ना?
itself.
ठीक है.
So when you think about reading a paper, right? Why you get a rejection, either from the editor or refereeing this? Most often, a lot of people have actually written papers on why do papers getting rejected itself. So one of the common most reason why papers gets rejected is simply the bad writing itself. So for example, like there are two usages in economics writing. And something which is very common is using the word long run, right? So, but the long run is different, right? Long run with the hyphen and without hyphen. So, with the hyphen is adjective. The same is applicable for the short run also. And many times we don't distinguish between what is a flow and the stock itself. For example, just saving without S is a flow. Savings is actually a stock. Right. So these are basically, simple things which we probably neglect it. But then, some the referees who are basically the experts in this field are really put off with this kind of, the bad writing. And most often you will see that many of us are too tempted to use many acronyms in the paper, right? And often I'm not saying that you should not have too many acronyms. Most often what happens is the acronyms are often made up. We just make up some acronyms which doesn't mean anything. And if you have a paper full of acronyms, I mean, imagine somebody who's reading this paper like has to remember almost all the acronyms till the last page of the paper. And then often what happens is another common put off is basically when you go through the results section, the readers are not able to keep track of which tables or which numbers. Okay, so this is especially for the economics, or even this is applicable for the management scholars as well, where many of us run a regression and then try to report these results. And often the numbers or the tables are jumbled up, or the table numbers are wrongly put, or often the titles are not appropriate for the table. So these are simply the big put-offs for the referees or the editors. So these simple things, if you just take care itself, can go a long way in helping you to get this paper through. And and many a times you will see that many people actually make tall claims in the beginning itself, in the introduction part itself. They just keep on bombarding that this is great thing, but at the end of the day, if you just look at the paper towards the end, the whole thing is something else, right? Which is boring. And then often if you see many papers, like it's just that there's no motivation for the topic other than X or Y did it for X or Y things, so I'm just using it. So it's just like saying that all my friends are doing it, therefore I am also doing it. So that's another problem, where there is any lack of motivation for the paper itself. And then often, I mean, like, you might see that, or you might very well feel that, look, I have a great idea. if your two friends are reading, they should clearly understand, okay, this is what the paper is trying to accomplish. It's not like, they get confused. Okay, one guy gets a different idea and the other guy gets a different idea. Like, then you have actually something is wrong with your introduction section. So how do you, do this? I mean, it is easier said than done. So how do you do this? And most often, many of us, when we start writing itself, the biggest challenge, I'm sure even myself, many of you would have felt, how do you, start the opening sentence itself? I think this is the first sentence what you're going to write. How do you start itself? That's probably the biggest troublesome part itself. So there are many ways of doing this, or writing this opening sentence itself. One way is basically highlight the importance of your research topic, and why is it relevant for your peer groups. So you can clearly state, I mean, like, be very specific, right? Your research question has to be specific, or your problem you're addressing should be extremely specific. So that makes it all the more interesting, right? And then, I mean, if you read the top journals in any of your field, you can actually see that these days they also discuss in the introduction a description of your research design and the findings itself. If you clearly look at the papers these days, introduction is not writing XYZ thing. It's also discussing about how did you go about doing this whole thing. It makes it even more interesting itself. See, the other effective way, and then there may be other effective ways. Okay, not denying the fact that there may be multiple ways of doing this. I'm just giving you some hint. Another way of doing this is basically what we call is by having a hook itself. Okay, you just give some statistic, or you can actually start out with a thought-provoking quote, or you can give some compelling anecdote. Okay, so you can actually borrow many of these from your media, or something. I mean, you might find something relevant from a newspaper. You can just use that, or from a case study, or whatever, or just simply a statistics. So that kind of a hook method, that's another effective method. You are hooking the reader itself at the outset itself. That will, grab the attention or generate the curiosity, and then it is like a movie itself. What comes next. That is what great papers actually makes to the top journals. So, in some ways of doing this, there are many ways. Probably you will have better ways. Many ways of doing this. You can actually start out with the puzzle. You can have. I'll give you, one example later on. You can have a perplexing or a difficult to explain fact, or a bold and a controversial statement, all those things, right? Or you can use a story from the everyday activity which affects many people. So these are different ways of starting off your introduction itself. For example, let me just give you one example here. A very famous paper by Carlyle in 2019. It's really closely related to the area of work we are doing for the last several years. So if you just read his opening sentence itself, you can see that the small scale entrepreneurs in developing countries, they are relying on working capital from the money lenders, and mostly these people are actually borrowing on a daily or weekly basis at an exorbitant interest rate. And we know this story in India and several developing countries where people borrow from informal sources. So the question what they ask is, this is a kind of a puzzle for developing economists. So they try to ask this question in the introduction section, is that why don't these people actually borrow less? Why don't they save and borrow less rather than borrowing this at an extremely exorbitant interest rates, right? So the reason being that the most often the small scale entrepreneurs are not aware of many of the financial services, so they end up at the doorstep of the this informal money lender. See, just look at the way they have actually introduced this uh, question itself, the research question itself, right? Just that makes this paper an extremely interesting paper, and then they go on to set up an experiment and try to argue and then show some evidence for this puzzle itself. So this is, I'm just giving you a hint, right? How do you actually begin and make make your paper actually enthusiastic for the reader itself. Uh, when you actually look at the introduction section, right? So you should have a clean research question, something which this paper asks, right? So why do these entrepreneurs? That's a clean research question. So the reader should have a clean research question, and this question should be at the end of the second paragraph or at the third paragraph. Right. So you should have a sentence in the second or the third paragraph that this paper addresses the question. If you don't have this, there's something wrong, that you don't have a proper research question itself. And within the introduction itself, the the other thing what the referees look forward is what is exactly the value addedness of this paper. And this because I have almost handled near about 500 papers in the last 4 years in the Indian Economic Journal. I have often seen that many people actually don't care about what is the value addition of this paper itself. So when you write a paper, you have to actually tell that, what is that the contribution you are adding. Otherwise, it's not making anything significant to the research field itself. So approximately you have to mention, it's not necessarily that you should have three contributions. Approximately you should have, three contributions, which is relative to your, the other existing papers itself. And this is basically the crucial aspect which is like make or break. Depending on this, the referees or the editor will be convinced about either to give you a R&R, which is revise and reject, or I'm sorry, revise and resubmit, or reject your paper itself. So you should, within the introduction, you should have a proper research question which you have to place it in the second or third paragraph. Then you should also give a hint about or explicitly mention what is the value addedness of this paper. And also, many times, I mean, of course, this is a very simple thing. It may not have much consequence, but then often, most often, I have seen people don't actually tell in the introduction, right, what is this the roadmap of the paper itself is. You have to give some outline, like how it is organized. Section 2 is going to be literature, third is data, etc., etc. So you will have to keep this short, but then this is something, this is simple thing which most often the scholars actually fail to mention in the introduction itself, the roadmap of the paper itself. And when you're doing an empirical paper, most of us will use data, and then if you're sending this paper for review for an international journal, the referees who are reading your paper may not be very familiar with the data sources, etc. So you will have to clearly mention that what is the kind of data you're using and the sources of this data. And these days they will ask you for a link. You can actually give a link to the data source. Even if it is not downloadable, still you can give the link to the original data source itself. And you can mention which are the studies which you have previously used this data source, which can actually strengthen the veracity of the source itself, and clearly state the number of observations. How did you reach at this observation? How the data cleaning process was done, and then uh, uh, and then instead of discussing too many things about your control variables, you have to spend a lot of energy discussing about your dependent variable in the regression, right? And then what's the theoretical motivation, etc., etc. Don't spend too much time discussing about the secondary control variables. It's just the control at the end of the day. And then almost all the data sources will have some of the other limitation, right? It can be in the form of some missing variables, or many data sets will have missing observations. There will be the responses, not everybody will respond. Some data sets will be smaller. All these things are limitations of data sources, and this is something we can't avoid. And it will be good enough that you acknowledge the limitation of the data itself. You can, if you do some kind of a robustness check or a falsification exercise, and then mention this limitation is a footnote or as a main text, it does not matter. But it's very important that we should acknowledge the limitation of the data itself, especially if you are targeting a very good journal. And then when you look at the economics, especially the empirical economics papers, what probably the referees look forward is your appropriate identification strategy itself. Identification, I mean, like any regression in this world will have an endogeneity issue. So you should clearly have an identification strategy. It can be an instrumental variable approach, or it can be a difference in difference approach. Whatever it is, you should have a clear identification strategy where you have to clearly explain about what is the endogeneity you are suffering from, what is the instrument you are using, and what is the rationale for using that instrumental variable approach. Without having a proper identification strategy, forget about publishing a paper in a top journal in economics. So this is about the analysis part. And then when it comes to the results, once you have this regression, you have your proper identification strategy, you have your results with you. How many results to report? This is often confusing. So I mean, many of you must be also worried about this issue, right? How many results to report? So most often our graduate students or the doctoral students, you will try to include as many results as possible just to impress, right? But the reality is that if you have too many things, okay, this is called as the kitchen sink approach. Okay, so you put everything in the sink, so that does not make any sense. What happens is the referee will get lost, bored, or annoyed seeing too many results. So what is important is basically you present only the results and uh, the estimates which are directly related to your study. The rest of the things you can actually put this as an online appendix, right? Whether people read this online appendix or not, that's not really matters. It will make the story simple, right? Many of these things can be easily relegated, and journals these days publish online appendices. So don't cramp your results with too many things that will actually make the paper weaker, not stronger. So that is something which many people actually don't care about. So once you have written the paper, right, the most important part is all about revising and editing your paper itself. I mean, these are very general comments. One is basically you have to be your own self-critic. If you can't redo your paper, nobody else in the world, I mean, don't expect that somebody else is going to, sit and read and give comments about your paper. So you yourself should be a self-critic of your own writing. And also, like, I'm sure many of us can use our friends as the first reviewers. It's like a pro quo itself, right? You give your paper to them, they can share their paper with you. So you can give some comments or feedbacks. Probably they'll identify something which you probably would have overlooked. And then remember, this writing is a continuous process until your paper is ready to be communicated, right? So you need to write, revise, rewrite. So it's all about writing. In fact, if you go to the internet, I don't know whether you have seen this, there are over 100 tips about how to finish your PhD in 5 years, right? And most important thing is do a proofreading either by yourself, or you can use some external sources to do the proofreading. Don't shy away from getting feedback from your supervisors or your other mentors. Go to good conferences, get their feedback. Don't be in love with your first draft itself. Remember that what you are seeing in the journal probably is the 20th or 25th draft, which is seeing the light of the day. So it goes through a considerable revision and editorial processes before we actually these nice flowery sentences and the flowery articles which are there in front of you almost on a day-to-day basis. So remember, whenever you get a revision, please take time to do the revisions. Don't rush, right? This is something which I have noticed. Most of the papers which are asked for revisions end up getting accepted, right? Sometimes you might encounter. We had this issue with a journal a couple of years back. They asked us to undertake a complete revision of the paper. We spent almost 8 months revising the paper, and then they rejected the paper. Okay, that rarely happens. But remember, most of the papers which are asked for revisions end up getting accepted. So you need to do us justice for while undertaking the revisions. And then, if you are a reviewer, this is my personal experience. Okay, sometimes you might see this strange experience. One thing is like most often these days, the editors will let you know about the decision. Like if you have accepted or asked for a minor, major, etc., they will let you know. Sometimes what happens is I might have asked for a revision, but the editor has recommended rejection, and it will actually put you off. They will go against your review itself. But the point is, many of these things in academics don't take it personal. Okay, they may have their own reason to reject the people despite the referees going for an R&R or a revise and resubmit decision. But what I have found is there are good incentives for being a good referee itself. One is basically you can build a reputation in your field itself. If you write some good referee reports, you get noticed. And these days, many of the journals have reward for referees. They also have award for good refereeing itself. And sometimes, if you get lucky, that you can be asked to become associate editors or editors of journals itself. And these are some incentives, right? And remember, economics is all about incentives itself. So, what is whenever you do something, I mean, expect there is something, some reward is waiting for you. So probably I don't want to take so much time. I think I have taken exactly the time what the organizer asked me to do. So let me just end it here, and then probably we can go ahead and discuss. Thank you for your patience.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Actually, sir, you here? So I would like to request to the all participants, if you have any question regarding the research paper writing and especially on the presentation of the sir, so you can ask uh, directly to the sir, or you can write your question in the chat box. Thank you so much. So now session is open. So any participant can ask the question. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
My name is Utkarsh Pandey, and I am a research scholar from University of Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh.
Okay, sir. Please ask the question.
Yes, Utkarsh, please go ahead. Yes.
Sir, I just wanted to know that if I am writing a research paper on a case study, so do I have to adopt the same criteria or same methodology that you have explained today?
So the case study probably is different. So I was mostly my presentation was mostly about the papers which are more on the using data and the empirical approach.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Anyone
Thank
else?
you.
Utkarsh, you want to ask other question?
No, sir, that's all from my
Okay.
side.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Anyone?
Good morning, sir.
Yes, Anurag, please.
Sir, what is the difference between the journalistic writing and the scientific writing? Scientific writing we know, but what is the journalistic writing?
Journalistic writing is just you just write without any kind of evidence or just like you in the newspaper, right? You make a lot of statements which has no scientific backing or just very loosely written sentences. Whereas in the scientific writing, we don't do that way. I mean, whenever you say something, you have to provide some reference or something like that. You can't make any loose sentences. Right, so it's not. There is a difference between scientific and journalistic writing in that way. The way you are writing, putting things itself. So which needs a little bit of training. Right, that's it's not just like randomly making a statement.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more thing I want to ask, sir. How can we avoid the desk rejection? Like you said, in few minutes, the paper is being rejected. But how can we write in such a way that we can avoid being rejected on test?
So that's what. So I said like there are certain components. I mean, it's. I would say if I you loosely use the term Vikash is, you should have a masala in your introduction, right? That is something which makes the paper interesting. For example, you should clearly state that research question in such a way that it's interesting when the editor looks at it, right? He should find that okay, this research question is something really interesting. So if you start off with a puzzle or if you start off with a statement, it can be motivated even from a newspaper article itself. Okay, you don't need to actually go and look around for a statistic. You can this study can be simply motivated with some phenomena which you observe from a newspaper item itself. Okay, so I mean, like for example, like we have a paper where we started off by telling that the government gives a lot of incentives for the foreign firms, right? The Intel got 1 billion in Costa Rica, right? Some government is giving free electricity. Whether this kind of subsidies or some incentives which are given, is it actually translating into better performance, or is it helping the domestic firms or something like that, which we can really motivate even from a news item which you see. And then you have to clearly tell, identify a prior work which is you are going to improve upon, and then what is the value addition. So when you have all these things written down neatly in the introduction part itself, you can avoid the desk rejection part itself, because remember there are too many papers getting submitted. In our journal itself, we saw that around, I think, 900 papers getting submitted in a year, and we are just five associate editors in this journal. Like, remember, we have to handle near about 300 papers in a year, and it's humanly impossible to go through each of these papers. So, what is the make or break is getting to read about your introduction. That gives the hint itself. So that is why I emphasize, like, of course the overall paper should be good enough, but the introduction part we don't give much importance. So introduction gives that hint itself, right? Whether this is a interesting problem which you are trying to address, right? What is the value addedness of this paper? So that is most often neglected, and then most of the time we spend on, I mean, like, you have to spend a good amount of time on the introduction and the conclusion, as well as on the time which you spend on analysis and the writing of the results, etc. So introduction is the key if you want to, stay away from the death rejection itself.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I do have a question.
Yes,
Yes,
Lavanya, please.
Lavanya.
Sir, while writing qualitative paper, what points we should be considering? Because qualitative writing of qualitative paper is like depends on very much on like author's personal. I mean, what should I say? Like, I have different kind of writing, whereas other authors have different style of writing. So, what points exactly should be considered while writing qualitative paper?
I don't have much idea about, let me just be very frank, I don't have much idea about qualitative papers because I have not done any qualitative papers. But I am sure the writing still matters. Even if you're writing qualitative, probably matters more than I wouldn't say that more than, but then it probably it's all about writing itself, right? So you will have to probably spend a lot of time about the art of learning the qualitative writing itself. I'm sure there is a session on the qualitative
We have
aspect.
mentioned, sir. We have mentioned one session.
So I'm sure. So
Yes.
qualitative writing does not mean that it's writing our personal experience in a journalistic manner. Right? I'm sure there is a scientific writing involved while doing a qualitative paper also. So writing plays a key role, whether you're doing a quant paper or an empirical paper or a call paper, right? Writing plays a crucial role. And why I'm emphasizing this is not part of our curriculum itself, right? I don't know any universities in India where we are having a course at the PhD level on how to write. Right, this is something. So in that way, I appreciate Vikash for organizing this, and
Thank you, sir.
emphasizing on the writing component itself, because that's something which we tend to overlook.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Also, I've
Sir,
sent one paper.
sir,
I've
I have a
sent
question.
some.
Harish sir, first, Lavanya madam want to ask. After Lavanya, you will ask, please.
Sir, I wanted to ask. Recently, I sent a paper, and that's Scopus Journal only, and their average day of acceptance was 21. So, till what time? I mean, I can expect a reply.
No, usually in Lavanya, what happens is they will write the average is 21. So let me just give you the straightforward example itself. So we actually select, suppose if I am mandated to select two referees, I send it off to two referees, right? And then most often what happens is there will be a delay by the referees in getting back to us. Like we usually give 7 days within which they have to say either decline, agreed, or not available. These are the three options. So many often what happens is it's not about the editorial team. It's mostly the referees may be busy. They may not have time to um, look at this. So there might be a delay because of that. So you can actually wait up to 60 days. 60 days is I know that you as a PhD student you don't have that patience, but if the journal is big enough, it's a very important journal, they will try to fast track. If there's a delay in the first round, they might try to fast track. But my experience was, Lavanya, you probably will not believe. I had an experience with my first paper, which I submitted in 2005. It was published only in 2010. It took 5 years. Okay, but it was worth at the end of the day. So it is sometimes the delay can happen maybe because the referees decline and then they have to find a second referee, and sometimes it is third referee. So there are multiple delays are there. So even though it is written median time or mean time is 21:30, it may not happen with all the articles submitted.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, yeah, Harish, please.
Sir, can we write a research paper based on the secondary data in the field of commerce?
Why not? I mean, a lot of commerce people, especially those who are working on financial markets, etc., they do a lot of work on the financial markets, or those who are working on the corporate finance. They do a lot of work using the secondary data.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir. I want to ask
Nitish,
question.
yes. Yeah.
Sir, actually, I am from IR background, internationalization background. So when we have to write international relation paper from
Yes, sir.
economic point of view, so what is the main introduction key
But
point? If we write a foreign policy, foreign
हाँ
relation
बस
from one
दो
country to
मिनट
another
में हम
country
लोग बस
from
इन हो
economic
रहा
point of view.
बैठ जाओ कोई नहीं.
No, I didn't get your question, Nitish. Because what is the
Actually,
question you raised?
I
Nitish ji,
said
can you yeah.
economic perspective in a foreign policy. So what should be the exact you have already discussed in this session on another way?
You have to tell no, what kind of a foreign policy you are talking about. Why is it relevant to study that particular foreign policy?
I, if I want to India Nigeria relation and its impacts on uh, changing global order since 2014 from economics perspective. So how can I write? What is the key point? Should we discuss?
No, you are the author of the paper. You should clearly motivate, right? Why that problem is important to study.
Hmm.
Then
Yes.
you can give some experience of the other countries or maybe from the uh, data or something and just highlight why this is an interesting issue to study.
Harish sir, please write your question in the group or the chat box or in the WhatsApp group. We send your question to other resource person who are related to the international relations background or the foreign policy background. So they will address to your question. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Uh,
Sir, I have one question also.
at 5 o'clock, Professor Neeraj Kumar, Associate Professor in the Matrei College, Delhi University, will take the one session. So I think he will address your question in much better way. Yes, yes, Shivani ji. I think this is the last question. Sir has not enough time, so it is the last question.
Shivangi, please, yeah.
Yes, yes, Shivani ji.
Sir, I want to know that introduction should be very effective in any thesis. When we should write introduction after the analysis of data or in the starting of the thesis?
You have to start from the beginning itself. Don't wait for the whole thing to end and then start writing the introduction, because that is one section which you're going to keep revising, right? So you don't delay until you do all the analysis and then you think that, okay, let me just start revising. I'll start writing
Uh,
the introduction,
Sir,
right? So
actually,
you,
I'm facing lots of hurdles in writing introduction part because
yeah,
I get confused all the times where how to start introduction and which part is important, which is not important, and how to
I
quote
said,
different.
so you will not get confused if you have a clear research question, right? You are very clear about the what is the
बैठो
research
बैठो बैठो
question you are trying to
आ जाओ
address,
बैठो बैठो
right? So once your question is
बैठो
clear,
खड़े
I
क्यों
mean,
बैठ जाओ
it takes a little while. It's not that easy, which is normal that you get confused in the beginning. But after a while, I mean, after you go through some literature or maybe some other sources, you probably will get a better clarity on this research question. Once you have a research question which is very clear, right? What is it that you are trying to ask in this research or ask in your thesis? Once that becomes very clear, right, this confusion will, sort of vanish. So that is quite natural. That's why I said that in the beginning itself, you should not wait for. I mean, like without knowing exactly what is the central question of your research, like you can't do the analysis. So therefore, it is very essential that you start in the beginning. You keep writing. I mean, that's the only way. You have to do this writing. It's just like that's why I said out in five. That's David Romer's rule. So he says that
क्यों खड़े हो बैठ जाओ बेटा
the only job is basically to write,
बस
write,
5 मिनट
write.
का है
At
मेरा
least one
बस इसीलिए
paragraph
कर रहे हैं
every week
तो
or
तुम खड़े
something.
क्यों
That
बैठो
is his rule.
बैठो बैठो
So
Okay, sir.
okay, so don't shy away from writing in the beginning itself.
Thank you, sir.
so thank you so much sir so now I would like to invite to Maithrine for give the formal vote of thanks over to you Maithrine Makrine madam are you here
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yes yes please
Thank you, sir. I would like to thank all the participants, organizing team, and most importantly, our speaker, Professor Subash Sir, for giving us time and also for all the participants for cooperating and making the session a successful one. Uh, Sir, thank you very much, sir, for providing us this insightful input in this session. And also, we hope that, sir, your lecture in this session will help each one of us, to all the participants, and also some others, the organizing team as well. Thank you, sir, once again. And thank you all.
So let me just thank Makrin and Vikash for
thank you
this
sir
opportunity, and all the best to all the participants who are here. Keep writing.
okay sir and
Bye.
I hope that I will invite in our upcoming lecture or the workshop you will accept our
Okay.
invitation
Okay, fine,
okay sir
thanks.
okay thank you sir thank you so participants I'm sending the attendance sheet